start our final installment of District 4 Basic Rules Clinic for 2023. So just these reminders, we ask that you keep yourself on mute for this clinic, for the entire clinic. At the very end, I'll be happy to talk with anyone at the end of this. And this clinic is being recorded. And like all District 4 Rules clinics, video recordings will be linked on the umpires page and to the District 4 website, to the District 4's umpire YouTube page. And that is the YouTube address right there. And just sort of reiterating, this is a basic rules clinic for umpires, managers, coaches, staff, players, anybody involved in Little League. You are welcome to be here. It's covering rules common to all levels of baseball and softball, but there is an emphasis on minors and majors baseball. We want to acquaint you with the rule book, cover safety issues, and introduce new rules for 2023. So this is what we've gone through so far, the first 3 Wednesdays there, and you can see that each of those have been recorded and they've been put up on the YouTube webpage. Also, what we're doing tonight, March 1st, we have a little bit of interference to continue. We have coaches interference and umpire interference. Then we're going to talk about the pitcher, the umpire, and major and minor division interleague rules. So that's what we'll finish this all off with. We ran 2 other rules clinics, a teenage baseball rules clinic and a softball rules clinic. You can see on the YouTube site that we have the teenage baseball rules clinic up. So if you're going to do any teenage baseball, please go and check it out. We also recorded the softball rules clinic, but that was just the other night. That is not up yet, but at some point it will be. And here is that YouTube page. And if you go to that, you can see for 2023, we have our first 3 rules sessions up. We'll have this one up, and we also have the teenage baseball one up. And we will have the softball one up too. And we run a series, fall ball for blues. And you can look at those also. They're about an hour, hour and a half long. There will be question periods. And there is a question slide inserted into about 3 times during this presentation. And if you have any questions, use the chat function and you can write it down anytime you want and type in the question, but send it only to Don Waddell, our District 4 UIC, and he will be the one who collects those and then reads them to me, and we'll answer those questions. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. Last time we talked about base awards. Excuse me, we talked about obstruction, and we were talking about interference. And we talked a lot about batter interference and runner interference and also catcher interference. So we're going to cover 2 more types of interference. And the first one is by umpires. So if a fair ball touches an umpire on fair territory before it touches an infielder, including the pitcher, or if this ball touches the umpire on fair territory, fair batted ball, before it passes an infield other than the pitcher, we have an immediate dead ball, and the batter is awarded first base. All runners will return to their base unless they're forced. So there's no penalty on the defense, no penalty on the offense. This is something the umpire got in the way, but we're going to try to make everybody whole. And this is how we do it. Remember, if an umpire is hit by a thrown ball, it's not interference at all, and we just simply play on. So here's an example of umpire interference. Now, if you are on the small diamond, minors or majors, there should never be a case of umpire interference. Why? Because you should be positioned behind the infielders. And if you're positioned behind the infielders, if a ball hits you, it's a live ball and it will not be interference. So where we run into this is in two places. One, if we're doing intermediate and above baseball, where we have an umpire on the inside, or if for whatever reason you have an umpire calling balls and strikes from behind the pitcher. You can also run into this kind of interference. So here's an example of that. Watch the umpire at second. He just cannot get out of the way. And you can see almost immediately he's calling time. That runner from first is forced to second, and the batter runner will be awarded first base. Now, there's another kind of umpire interference, and this is when a plate umpire interferes with the catcher attempting to throw a runner out. This is a kind of interference that we actually will probably see more of. This is a delayed dead ball. The reason for that is we give a chance to the defense to try to throw that runner out who's stealing. If the runner is thrown out, the out stands and we ignore the interference. If, however, that runner is not thrown out, what we do is we call time at the end of this and we return all the runners to their base at the time of the pitch. So here's an example of a runner trying to steal third and the catcher trying to throw him out. So again, on this play, we're not going to immediately call time. We're going to see if that runner is thrown out. If they're not, then we're going to send that runner back. So that's umpire interference. And coaches can also interfere. And coaches interfere by physically aiding a base runner. That is grabbing them to hold them back, say a third base coach who's trying to hold a runner at third and not allow him to run home. Or if that base coach wants to push a runner along to the next base, they cannot physically aid that base runner. There's another kind of coach interference, and that is if the coach is yelling at defensive players, such as drop it, or trying to yell something to the defensive player to distract them, to confuse them, that will also be interference. Now, does that mean base coaches can't touch the runners? No. So a runner gets a triple and they come into third base. Yeah, give that runner a high five or, slap on the helmet. You can do that as long as you're not physically aiding them to either advance or retreat. What's the penalty? If a play is being made on the runner, we have an immediate dead ball and the runner is out, and all other runners will return to the last touched base. If a play is not made on a runner, play continues. It's a delayed dead ball, but the runner will still be out for that coach's interference. So this is probably one of the more famous in Little League cases of coaches' interference. What I want you to focus on is third base. There's a little bit of confusion. One of the players is trying to call time, but the umpire at third does not grant time. So we have a live ball situation. And watch the coach at third base putting his hands on the runner, trying to get him to run home. So there's the runner at third. Coach comes over to him, touching him, pushing him. Now watch our third base umpire calling time, announcing coach's interference, declaring the runner out, going, bad coach, bad coach. So the umpire at third base later said that he hesitated the first two times when he just touched his leg, but when he pushed on the middle of his back, that's when he decided he absolutely had to make that call. Okay, so that's it for interference. So we're going to move on. And what I want to do right now is cover majors and minors interleague rules. So if you're umpiring, coaching, managing majors and minors, and you folks play interleague rules, these will be the rules that you play by. And that website right there, that URL, that is where you will find the interleague rules. It will take you to this site here. And as you can see, there's contact information for all the levels of baseball. And there are the interleague rules for the 60-foot diamond and for teenage baseball. You'll also find the interleague schedules there, big diamond locations. And at the bottom, you can see that you can also find the pitching log there. Okay, so what rules do we play minors and majors baseball interleague by? The games are played by book rule and District 4 interleague rules only. There are no other local rules and no manager agreements are allowed. If you're an umpire and you're umpiring a interleague game, and both managers want to do something different that's contrary to these rules, do not allow it. Ground rules should be established prior to the game and reviewed at the plate meeting. Umpires. The home team shall provide 2 umpires, at least one of which will be 18 years of age. So in an ideal situation, we're having either 2 adult umpires or an adult umpire and a youth umpire. That's what we want in interleague games. However, realistically, we know that there are times when there will be 2 youth umpires on a game. If that ever happens, the home league must provide a game coordinator per Rule 9.03D. That game coordinator must be at that particular field for that particular game during the entire game. What that means is if there are 2 games going on, you cannot have, and you have youth umpires at both of those fields, you can't have just one game coordinator following both games. The game coordinator is for a game. Also, that game coordinator can't be doing something else, such as in the snack shack, running the snack shack. If you want to find out more of what the responsibilities are for a game coordinator, if you look at the middle of this slide, you'll see one of the recordings we have from District 4 is game coordinator orientation for tournament. And basically it would be very similar as to the regular season. So we do have a training there if you want to learn how to be a game coordinator. Okay, number of players. A game in interleague minors and majors may begin, it may continue, and it may end with 8 players on a team. The 9th spot of the batting order is simply skipped over. It is not considered an out. The batting order we will use is a continuous batting order. So if you want to read up on that, go to Rule 4.04 in the rule book. There will be no bat 9, even if one or both managers want to do it. Because we have a continuous batting order, players can freely be substituted on defense. We will enforce 602C, that is a foot in the batter's box. We went over this at an earlier rules clinic. Also, interleague minors and majors will allow a courtesy runner. And the courtesy runner, of course, is for the pitcher or catcher of record. What does that mean? That means the pitcher or catcher who was last on defense the half inning before. And there must be 2 outs. And the courtesy runner is the player who made the last out. Now, for the minor division only, a half inning ends when there are 3 outs that are made or 5 runs are scored. The Little League rule book allows an option of batting through the lineup. We are not using that option in Interleague. So the half inning is either 3 outs or 5 runs scored. And the run rule is waived in the 6th and all subsequent innings. That means the 6th inning, and if we go beyond that, we allow unlimited runs. Ending the game, we are using the 15, 10, and 8-run rule. I'm not going to go over this one because we went over this in an earlier rules clinic, but we are using this run rule. The opposing manager will concede. There are no exceptions to allow a game to continue after this point. If, for example, the game lasts only 2.5 innings and it's over, but both teams want to continue playing, if you are an umpire because of liability issues, leave the field. If the teams want to still have a scrimmage, that's between them. But as umpires, we leave the field. Ending the game, we also are using time limits for Interleague. And we are using the 2-hour time limit, which means that any inning that begins prior to 2 hours will be completed, but no new inning may be started after 2 hours. All games that are called for time limit are considered regulation, no matter how few innings are played. And a game ending in a tie after the time limit expires will not be continued or resumed at a later date. It just is too much of a headache for rescheduling. Pitching logs. If you are playing, if you are playing majors and minors interleague, if you're a manager, you must keep a pitching log. You must be able to produce that pitching log, which will show who has been pitching, when, the pitch count, and also the threshold. We will talk about a threshold a little bit and go through what that is. What happens if a manager shows up to a game and they cannot produce that pitching log? If that is the case, then each pitcher on that team will be limited to only 20 pitches, and there will be no threshold allowed, meaning 20 pitches is 20 pitches. So if you don't show up with that log, know that none of your pitchers will pitch more than 20 pitches. And if no pitching log is produced and the opposing manager believes that an ineligible pitcher was used in the game, the manager may file a protest. So remember that pitching log. Find some way for, if you're a manager, always have it with you. And here is that pitching log. Note that it has the date of the game, the number of pitches thrown, threshold, pitcher's name, uniform, league playing age. You're going to initial it as a manager, have the opposing manager initial it. So that is, and the scorekeeper. So after the game, go up and make sure that that's initialed. And then it'll be written in the number of days of rest that are required and when that pitcher will be eligible to pitch again. Okay, Don, do we have any questions for what we've gone through so far?
Jim, we have one question. Can you maybe clarify exactly what interleague play is?
Yes. So interleague play is when we have 2 teams from different leagues. So if Martinez were playing a game against Pinole, or Walnut Creek was playing a game against East County, that would be considered an interleague game. If two Martinez teams were playing, that would be considered an intra-league game, and it would not be part of interleague. All the interleague games have been scheduled, and that schedule is up on the District 4 website, that web page that I showed you.
Okay, that's all. Got another question here. Pitching log for interleague play, how far back does it need to go?
Keep all of that pitching log together. Don't throw any out. But I can say that you're going to have to keep it when we get to days of rest. You're going to have to keep it at least for a week, but keep them all together. Just staple them together and keep them together so there's no questions or problems.
Okay, that's what we have right now, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go through pitching. So if you want to read up on the pitching rules, go to two places. One in the rule book is Regulation 6, and the other is Rule 8. And you will find pretty much every single rule or regulation related to pitching in both of those places. So to understand pitching, one of the first things we have to understand is what is threshold exemption, because there are limits to how many pitches a pitcher can pitch in a day. There are limits to the number of pitches a pitcher can pitch, and for days of rest for when they can pitch again. There are also limits in terms of the number of pitches they can pitch and if they can become a catcher in that game or not. So there's a number of these rules which limit the number of pitches that a pitcher can pitch. And so a number of them allow for what we call a threshold exemption. So if a pitcher has reached a pitching limit and threshold exemption is allowed, and I will go through which rules allow for threshold exemption, the pitcher may continue to pitch until one of the following conditions occurs. That batter reaches base, that batter is put out, the third out is made to complete the half inning or the game, or the pitcher is removed from the mound prior to the batter completing his or her at bat. So what this is saying is if we are in the middle of pitcher is pitching to a batter and a limit has been reached, that batter is allowed to continue over the limit until one of these four instances happen. Now, even though they've gone over the limit, because it's a threshold exemption, we still go back and say the pitcher only pitched the certain number of pitches that they pitched for the purposes of whatever rule there is. So we'll see this develop as we go along here. So pitching limits, it's based on age, and these are the maximum number of pitches that pitchers are allowed to pitch in a day. If you're in the majors and you're an umpire, make sure that you know the ages of the pitchers, because you may have a league age 10-year-old pitching, and they will be limited to only 75 pitches and not the 85 pitches that the other kids are limited to. Now, this is a threshold exemption allowed. So if you hit 85, in the middle of pitching to a batter, you can continue pitching to that batter. So say by the end, you've thrown 90 pitches, it's considered for the pitching limits that you reached 85. Rest requirements. All this is designed to protect a young pitcher's arm. That's what Little League is concerned about. So if you pitch a certain number of pitches, you must have calendar days of rest. So if you pitch fewer than 20 pitches, you don't need to have any calendar days of rest. But if you pitch 21 to 35 pitches, for example, then you must have one calendar day of rest. What does that mean? You pitch 35 pitches on Monday, you cannot pitch on Tuesday, but then you could pitch on Wednesday. Once again, threshold exemption is allowed. So if you're in the middle of facing a batter and you reach your 20 pitches and you end up pitching to that batter and you end up pitching 25 pitches, it will only be considered the 20 and you will need no calendar days of rest. Umpires, at the beginning of before the game, when you meet with the managers and you exchange lineups, ask each manager, do you have any pitching restrictions? This is that point where the manager will tell you the pitchers who aren't available. For example, Johnny just yesterday pitched 85 pitches and therefore must have 4 days of rest. So Johnny can't pitch. At all levels of Little League Baseball, no pitcher may pitch 3 consecutive days. So if you only pitched 5 pitches on Monday, you're eligible to pitch 5 pitches. You're eligible to pitch on Tuesday. You only pitch 5 pitches on Wednesday. That would be the 3rd consecutive day. You cannot pitch. In the minors only, a player who's league age 12 may not pitch. In the minors and majors, there is no re-entry as a pitcher if they are removed from the mound. So once a pitcher is removed from the mound, they cannot come back and pitch in that game. At all levels, if a pitcher pitches 41 or more pitches in a game, they cannot catch for the remainder of the day. Once again, we allow the threshold exemption if you're in the middle of pitching to a batter. What's this designed to do? To protect that kid's arm. Because what are the 2 players who throw every single pitch? It's the pitcher and it's the catcher throwing the ball back to the pitcher. So we believe that if a pitcher has pitched 41 pitches, we don't want them then to spend the rest of the game throwing as a catcher. And at all levels, if a catcher is caught 4 or more innings, they cannot pitch that calendar day. So catching a single pitch constitutes an inning. It isn't if the catcher catches in warm-ups, it's catching a regular pitch during the inning. So as umpires, what are you going to do here? You need to keep records of this. So anytime you have a pitcher and that pitcher leaves the mound for another pitcher, find out from the scorekeeper how many pitches they pitched. And if it's 41 or more, make sure you note that and make sure that player does not come into the catching position. Also, every single inning, look down, see who your catcher is, and make a note of it. So at the end of the game, you should know how many innings each catcher caught. Also, when you're having that pregame meeting with the managers, make sure that you emphasize to them, anytime you have a pitching change, anytime you have a catching change, you need to come and announce that to me. Also, talk to your scorekeeper. Ask them to keep track of new catchers who come in. Okay. A player who has played the position of catcher for 3 innings or less, and then moves to the position of pitcher and delivers 21 pitches or more in the same day, may not then return to the catcher position on that calendar day. Again, threshold exemption is allowed. This is majors and minors. If you have intermediate and above, that 21 pitches raises to 31. So again, we don't want a player who is catching 3 innings, is then pitching over 21 pitches and then comes back to catch. We're trying again to protect their arms. Minors through intermediate, a player may not pitch in more than 1 game in a day. So if you have a double header, minors through intermediate, know that if you pitched in 1 game, even 1 pitch, you cannot then pitch in the following game. Visits to the pitcher. There's a difference between minors and majors and above. So in minors, a manager or a coach, it doesn't have to be the manager, it can be the coach, it can be either one of them, can visit the pitcher 2 times in an inning. If, however, they come out a 3rd time, then the pitcher must be pulled. That manager or coach is also allowed 3 visits per game. And on the 4th visit, that pitcher must be pulled. In the majors and above, it's 1 visit per inning. The 2nd visit in that inning, the pitcher must be pulled, and they're allowed 2 visits per game. On the 3rd, the pitcher must be pulled. A visit to any defensive player is counted as a visit to the pitcher. There is no secret dividing line. A lot of people think that if a manager crosses over the foul line, that it becomes a visit, but if they don't cross the foul line, it's not a visit. It doesn't matter. If that manager comes out of the dugout or a coach and speaks with a defensive player, even if it isn't the pitcher, that is considered a visit to the pitcher. If the manager calls over a defensive player, and you'll see this especially with the catcher, if the manager calls over the catcher to come over to the fence and tells them something, that is considered a visit to the pitcher. An injury conference is not a visit, whether with any defensive player or the pitcher. What you should do as an umpire is, if you think an injury conference is being made, ask the manager if that's the case. If they say yes, then you go out with that manager and you listen into that conference. If that manager begins at any point to begin discussing strategy, tell that manager, excuse me, but if you keep talking strategy, I'm going to have to charge you with a visit. And that should shut that down. Okay, hands to mouth at all levels of baseball. A pitcher cannot bring their pitching hand in contact with their mouth or lips while on the pitcher's plate. The penalty, a ball on the batter, and the pitcher is warned that if they continue to do this, it can lead to removal from the game. That isn't removal from the mound, that is removal from the game. The exception is the pitcher can bring their hand to their mouth in that pitching mound area, as long as they're not on the pitching rubber, and as long as that pitcher then distinctly wipes their hand before going to the ball. So if they lick their hand, we want to see a decided wiping off on the pants legs, on the shirt, something before they contact the ball. Here is a pitcher, and this was not called, and this was at the Western region. This pitcher is standing on the rubber. Went to hand, went directly to ball while on the rubber. that should have been stopped before the pitch and a ball called, and the pitcher warned that if he continued to do that, he could be removed from the game. Also, applying a foreign substance of any kind to the ball is also illegal. And dirt is considered a foreign substance. If the pitcher tries to rough up the ball in the dirt, or if the pitcher picks up dirt and then goes directly to the ball with that, that is applying a foreign substance. The pitch is called a ball, except that the offense may take the result of the play. For example, that we call an illegal pitch, the pitch is made and the kid hits a home run. I think you're going to want to take the home run. This is a pitcher from Hawaii, one of their best pitchers. This pitcher did this continuously at the Western Region Little League World Series and also at the Little League World Series in Williamsport this year. It was never called once. So I want you to see he reaches down, he picks up dirt, he immediately goes to the ball, and only then does he sort of wipe his fingers off. So this is illegal. Dirt goes directly to the ball, then wipes his hand off. He did this each and every game. He should have been wiping his hand off before he went to the ball. Okay, we're going to talk about illegal pitches. There are two kinds of illegal pitches that are treated differently than any other kind of illegal pitch. And this is in the minors and majors. And a pitch delivered to the batter without the pivot foot in contact with the pitcher's plate. You rarely see this, but every once in a while, a young pitcher might mess up and will step forward or step behind the plate and then throw a pitch. It's possible for that to happen. The other kind, and what we're much, much more concerned about, is a quick return pitch, which should never be allowed. It's when the batter is not reasonably set in the batter's box. There is a myth in baseball that once the batter steps into the box with both feet, the pitcher is allowed to pitch. That is not the case. The batter is allowed time to become reasonably set in the batter's box not before the pitcher pitches, but before the pitcher even begins the pitching motion. So, what's the penalty? With or without base runners? It's a dead ball. It's a ball on the batter. No runners may advance, and a pitch is credited to the pitch count even if the pitch is not thrown. Even if the umpire comes out and calls time before the pitch is thrown, declares a quick return pitch, we are going to add a pitch to the pitch count. And if the pitch is delivered and play follows, the offense can take either the play or the penalty. It's a delayed dead ball. So here's an example of a pitcher, and I have no idea what he was thinking, but this is pitching without the foot in contact with the pitching plate. He's trying to sort of quick pitch, and he seems to end up injuring himself in the process. In Little League, this is an illegal pitch. It will always be a ball on the batter, whether there are runners on or not. This is what we are much more concerned about, and this is something that we should have never allowed to happen, and that is a quick pitch. The problem with the quick pitch is we put the batter at risk of being hit. The batter may not even know that the pitch is coming in, and that's the case here. This will play twice. If you look at the umpire is looking down at his indicator, and he's surprised that the pitcher is pitching. If you look at the batter only looks up when the ball is almost to his head. See, the pitcher has already started his motion. At this point, the umpire should be calling time because the batter is just stepping in and the pitcher is starting his motion. The umpire should have called time and declare that in a quick pitch and add a ball to the batter. That is how you shut it down. You don't allow it to happen, but you keep adding balls to the count so that eventually the pitcher will learn not to do this. It's a safety issue. Just want to watch one more time. Watch when that player looks up and watch where the ball is. If that ball had been heading right towards his face, he wouldn't have known it and he would have had no time to get out of the way. So never allow that to happen as an umpire. Coaches, managers, train your pitchers, wait till the batter's set. Okay, there are all kinds of other illegal pitches, and I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. But a couple of them that we see very common in minors and majors is a pitcher begins the pitching motion, but then stops the pitching motion and doesn't complete the pitch, or drops the ball. Those are probably the two most common we see in the minors and majors. Now, the penalty as opposed to the penalty on the other two pitches I mentioned is a little bit different. Without runners on base, there is no penalty. There's no pitch. It's a dead ball. It's simply a do-over. So just call time and just say, let's reset. And that's all you do. So there's going to be no ball declared. However, if there is a runner on base, then it will be a delayed dead ball. We will give a ball on the batter and no runners advance and a pitch credited to the pitch count, even if the ball is not thrown. And if the pitch is delivered and play follows, offense can take the play or the penalty. So here is the Little League World Series from this year. This is a pitcher who is stopping his motion. And as we can see, we have a runner on, so there will be a penalty. So the umpire is declaring an illegal pitch, alerting the scorekeeper to add a ball to the count, very clearly now giving the count as to what it is. The only thing I would say different here is time should be called. And also when you're pointing to the scorekeeper of adding a ball, make sure you use your left hand and not your right hand. Your right hand is used for strikes, left hand used for balls. Okay, Don, do we have any questions?
Jim, we have a couple of questions here.
Good.
This relates to what you talked about, what the pitcher can't do. So if the pitcher, not on the pitcher's plate, but on the mound, goes to the mouth and does not distinctly wipe off before going to the ball, what is the penalty?
We are going to declare a ball on the batter. We are also going to go out and change out the ball. And by doing that, we are going to warn the batter of what they are doing.
Okay, what if the pitcher is not on the pitcher's mound, but somewhere else in the infield and goes to their mouth and doesn't wipe off? What is the penalty? Is there any difference?
Rule book is silent on that. The rule book, the only exception that it talks about is in that on that pitching mound area. I wouldn't do anything as an umpire unless I believe that that pitcher was attempting to leave that area to lick their fingers and then go to the ball in some way to gain an advantage. Do you have any different interpretation there, Don?
I think that's a good answer, Jim. Okay, we got another parallel question. Is it okay if a pitcher takes their hat off, rubs their pitching hand through their hair, and goes to the ball?
It's probably going to be
Okay, the person
sweaty.
that asked this question said, I saw it in the Giants game yesterday.
I'm assuming that the hair is either greased or that it's sweaty. I'm going to ask that pitcher. I'm not going to do a penalty on that, but I'm going to ask that pitcher, hey, if you're going to go through your hair like that, I want you to wipe your hand off. Okay. Listen, most of the time, these players are very unconscious of this. They are not trying to gain any kind of advantage. And we're just going to talk to them about, hey, don't do that.
Okay, so we got another, that's a good answer, Jim. And then we got another one that perhaps you can add some context to. It's how do we talk to a pitcher who's doing something like rubbing the ball in the dirt or putting dirt on the ball? What's the best way to get them to stop doing that? Oh, it went on to say, this is minor baseball.
Okay. Well, again, if it's something that they continually do, calling illegal pitches and balls is one way to deal with that. The way I do it is I don't make a big production out of it. If I see a player do it, I'll call time. I'll take a ball out of my ball bag. I'll go to the pitcher. I'll say, hey, pitch, let's switch out the ball. And then I'll tell them what they did and say, hey, you can't do that. You can't rub the ball on the ground like that. So please stop doing it. And generally, they're going to say, oh, I'm sorry. And you just go, hey, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just don't do it again.
Okay, those are our questions.
Okay. We're going to talk about the umpire, and we don't have a lot to talk about here, actually, but there are some things that I want to emphasize with the umpire. First is, if you are the plate umpire, according to the rule book, you must wear shin guards, a chest protector, a mask, and if you are a male, you must wear a protective cup. I have talked with umpires before where they say, oh, I do games without a chest protector. That is against the rules. And if you see your plate umpire, your base umpire doing that, go tell them, hey, put on your chest protector. Hey, put on your shin guards. It's dangerous to do that. It's also highly recommended that the umpire wear a dangling throat guard, just like we require for the catchers. It is not required for the umpires, however. I may have stated this before in this one of the earlier rules clinics of this basic rules clinic. I've done 6 of these in less than a month, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. But as an umpire, I have been hit in majors with a fastball to my dangling throat guard. I will not umpire a game without a dangling throat guard. And I have had it hit my dangling throat guard and it pushed it against my throat. And I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. And it took me a minute or two before I could even swallow. It was very startling and very scary. And that was with a throat guard. Without a throat guard, good chance I probably would have been taken off the field in an ambulance. So wear a throat guard. Umpires bring extra ones. So if you're umpiring with somebody, especially a youth umpire that may not have one, make sure you give them one. Okay, judgment decisions. For example, ball, strike, safe, out, fair, foul. But going beyond that, was that a foul ball? Was that not a foul ball? Was that fly ball high enough to be declared an infield fly? Was that a catch? Was that not a catch? Those are judgment decisions. There can be no objections on the field by players, coaches, or managers on judgment decisions. If you are an umpire and you have managers or coaches or players who are objecting to your judgment calls, shut it down early in the game when it first happens. Do not allow that to happen. It is in the rule book. Okay, umpires cannot overturn another umpire's call. I want to read that again because it's very important. Umpires cannot overturn another umpire's call. In the rule book, no umpire shall criticize, seek to reverse, or interfere with another umpire's decision unless asked to do so by the umpire making it. So if you believe the umpire you're working with called safe and the runner was out, you will not interfere with that call. You will not seek to reverse it. You will not tell a coach or manager, yeah, he blew that call. I had safe. You will not do that. If an umpire making a call wishes to get added information, they can call their partner or partners to them and they can discuss. And you can, as the umpire making the call, you can ask of the other umpire, did you have anything different? Did you see that player differently than I called it? Did you see that first baseman pull their foot? Did you see a tag between second and third base? As a umpire who didn't make the call, you simply answer the question, give the information to that umpire who made the call, and then they can take that information and decide either to keep their call or to reverse their call. Now, we went over this before. If a youth umpire is used, you need an adult umpire on that game also. Or if you don't have an adult umpire, you have one or two or more just youth umpires, you must have a league-assigned adult game coordinator. I can't emphasize this enough. If you are a youth umpire and say you're going to work with another youth umpire on a game, first question you should have is, who is my league-assigned adult game coordinator? If there is none, do not umpire that game. There must be a game coordinator. If that game coordinator is walking off and not paying attention to the game, force that game coordinator to come back, halt the game. This is a rule. What we're trying to do is protect youth umpires. It is very unfortunate and it is just wrong, but we see youth umpires yelled at a lot by coaches and managers, or intimidated consciously by managers and coaches. Most managers and coaches are great about it and great with youth umpires and support youth umpire programs. But we do see it where that's not the case, and we're just simply not going to allow it. And that's what the game coordinator can help with. Umpires may order both teams into their dugouts and suspend play until such time as league officials deal with unruly spectators. As an umpire, we are only concerned about inside the fence and inside the dugouts. We are only concerned about the players and the manager and the coaches and our fellow umpires who are out there. We are not concerned about the crowd. We will have no communication with that crowd. No matter how tempting it is, we will not talk to that crowd. If at any point We believe that spectator behavior has reached a point where it has become disruptive, where it is personally aimed at players or coaches or managers, or personally aimed at us. We can stop the game. We can put the players and the coaches and the manager in the dugout. And we are not going to ask the manager, hey, get control of your crowd. That's not the manager or coach's responsibility. It's the responsibility of a league official. What I do when this happens, put them in the dugout and then start asking, who is the league official here? And if there is no league official, we're just going to hang out. I will guarantee you, generally, the other spectators will address the issue and get that spectator under control or off out of the area. They want their kids to play. But again, don't engage with the spectators as an umpire. Don't have rabbit ears. Don't be constantly listening to the fans. Focus on the game. This goes back to rule 3. It is the sole responsibility of the umpire in chief. Usually that's the plate umpire, but I would say both umpires, if we have a 2-umpire game, have both of them make this decision. They determine whether play should be suspended due to weather or conditions of the playing field. They also have the sole responsibility to determine if play is resumed or terminated after a suspension. So if rain comes up and you believe that it's not safe to continue playing the game, and you suspend the game, the rule book states that if you believe the game may be continued, you have a half an hour of that delay. If you have any kind of, well, maybe it's safe, maybe it's not safe, well, maybe it's safe, maybe it's not safe, what do we always do? We always err on the side of safety. Okay. This is for managers, coaches, but it's also for our umpires to know if a manager or a coach wants to challenge one of our calls, what's the procedure for this? So remember, judgment calls, safe out, ball strike, fair foul, can't be questions. That doesn't mean that we're going to keep a manager in the dugout because we don't necessarily know what they're coming out to talk to us about. So what a manager should do, and it's only the manager, do not engage with a coach who is attempting to challenge a call. This is the manager's responsibility. The manager is either in the dugout or base coach position. What they need to do is request time and ask to approach the umpire. As an umpire, allow them to approach. The manager should go to the umpire who made the call, either the plate umpire or the base umpire. The umpire should not go out immediately to the adult, and even though the youth umpire made the call. The manager must go out to the youth umpire. If you are an adult umpire on a game with the youth umpire, go out to that conference also. You want to be a second set of ears. You want to make sure that that coach, that manager is not trying to intimidate that youth umpire. Now you have a conversation. The conversation isn't going to begin until both the manager and the umpire have come together, have reached each other. As an umpire, don't stand out in the field and make the manager walk all the way to you. Start walking to the manager. Meet that manager halfway. If the manager starts yelling at you about what just happened, just say, Bill, hold on, Bill. Wait till we get together. Wait till we get together and wait till you reach each other. And then the manager, in a calm and collected voice, will ask an umpire a question about the call. Now, if that manager starts yelling at you as an umpire, do not allow that to happen. Bill, I'm not yelling at you. Please stop yelling. I will talk to you, but only in a normal voice. And if that manager keeps yelling, then simply send that manager back to the dugout, and they have lost their opportunity to challenge that call. So a good thing for umpires to do as that manager comes out, you meet, start the conversation with, do you have a question for me? You're getting that coach or manager to start thinking of asking you a question. Didn't that first baseman pull his foot? Did the runner on second interfere with my shortstop making a play on the batted ball? I thought my fielder tagged that runner. What did you see? Those are sort of the ideal things. The umpire is going to answer that question and explain the call. You can go back and forth with that manager. But at a certain point, if the manager begins repeating over and over the same points, we need to just simply end that conversation and ask the manager to go back to the dugout. The manager may ask us if we could get help, if we could go to our other umpire and ask him or her for help. We, as the umpire, can make the decision to do that or not. If it's our call and we're 100% sure, the batter's foot reached first base before the first baseman caught the ball, that's a judgment call. I'm not going to get help on that. Just simply say as an umpire, that was my call. I'm 100% sure of my call. I don't need to get help. But if that manager has asked everything nicely, and if you're thinking, I might have missed that tag, I didn't have the best of angles, it's a good idea to go ask your other umpire what they had. Now, if you go ask that other umpire for help, and you go ask, you say, no, I don't need help. We're going to continue with the game now. The manager still has the ability to protest the game. That's on them to decide to do it or not. Now, if you as an umpire decide, hey, I will ask my partner, at that point, ask the manager to go back in the dugout and tell them, hey, I'm going to ask my partner, I want you to go back in the dugout, and then I'll announce my decision, and we will go on from there and resume play. So talk to your other umpire, decide whether you want to change your call, keep your call, and then come out and then reiterate that call. Runner is out. At that point, play ensues. Once again, if the manager has a problem, they can file a protest. They can protest. Okay, I want to go through some final thoughts here, and then we will have our final set of questions. So we use the term kids first. That's what Little League is all about. It's not about us, the umpires, the managers, the coaches, the adults. It's about the kids. The number one thing that we want to say after a game is all those kids who showed up at the field had a safe game and they had a fun game. And this is all the way through seniors, because Little League seniors, they're still children. They're still kids. Who assures that they have a safe and fun game? It's the adults. It's the managers, the coaches, the umpires. And here, as youth umpires, you're a part of this. You're a part of making sure it's a safe game, it's a fun game. The adults set the example and must work together. What we need to do is get out of the mindset that umpires and managers and coaches are somehow antagonistic. In Little League, we are not. We're all working towards the same goal, and our same goal is a safe and fun game for the kids. Little League is a youth leadership program. It's not a baseball program. It's not a softball program. It's a youth leadership program that uses baseball and softball to teach life lessons, to build stronger individuals and stronger communities. We just happen to use softball and baseball to teach those life lessons. If you read Rule 1 of the rule book, and in the baseball rule book, the first sentence of Rule 1, Little League Baseball in all divisions is a game. Let's always remember that. It is a game. We want to focus on the experience, not the outcome. I end this on various rules clinics with this video. And this is a video of what absolutely should never happen in a Little League game. If you look, we have a coach pitch here. We have a pitcher out in that circle area, but we have a coach pitcher. So this is obviously, a minor division. If you'll look at the plate umpire, he's actually standing off to the side. So what I want you to be focusing on is the catcher. Okay, I'm going to play it through later, but I don't care if that catcher was guilty of obstruction, if what happened here, except that we know we have a player who came in, lowered his shoulder, hit the catcher in the head, knocked him over. His head, there's actually, you can hear a little bit of a thump, hits the plate as that player then rolls over the head of that catcher. That, right at this point, is the most important thing that happened, is a player possibly got hurt, could possibly have a concussion. So now I want to play what happens afterwards. So catcher has been thumped. He gets down. He actually, you could say he kind of stumbles a little bit standing up. Now, what I want you to notice here is how many adults do we have out there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 adults. At one point, there's actually 10 adults on this field. So now, with 10 adults on the field, I want you to just focus, I'll play it out now, on the catcher. Stumbles, rubs his head, bends over. Rubs his head, bends over. They're arguing the call. Rubs his head. Bends over. Nobody's talked to him. There, maybe that adult asked him something. He rubs his head again and bent over, holding his head as these adults are yelling. Holding his head. Bends over again. Only now does that coach come over and start seriously addressing that player and hopefully asking if they're hurt and hopefully beginning a concussion protocol. That's after the spectator yelled, "Shut up, let's play ball." Don't ever allow a Little League game to be like that. Again, focus on the experience, not the outcome. Okay, Don, do we have questions?
Yeah, we have question, Jim. It refers to the discussion about how to engage the manager about a question about the play. And can you clarify the timing of when the manager can make a protest in that situation?
The wind, if it's over a rules interpretation or rules application, the window for making that protest is before the next pitch, play, or attempted play. Once there's a pitch, play, or attempted play, the window for that protest ends. If it's a protest over ineligible pitcher or ineligible player, that can be made until the at any point during the game until the umpires walk off the field. I hope that answers that.
Okay, those are the questions, Jim.
Okay. Hey, we're ending early today, folks. So one final slide here. There's always one final slide. I want to give some contact information here. And so the ADA for small diamond baseball is Jeff Shue. He is the one who's running the Interleague program for the minors and majors baseball. Phil Raines runs it for softball, and Grayson Lawrence runs it for teenage baseball. But we've been focusing a lot on minor and major baseball here. So if you have any questions that relate to Interleague, please contact Jeff Shue. The second person we have here is Don Waddell, who is the District 4 UIC umpire in chief. If you have any kind of umpire issues, please contact Don. And then myself, Jim Rose, I'm the District 4 ADA for training, and I generally deal with rules. So if you have any rules questions, whether it's about Interleague or whether it's about in general about the rules, or rules about an in-house game you have just within your own league, please always feel free to contact me. Okay, I'm going to leave the final word to our District 4 UIC, Mr. Don Waddell.
Thanks, Jim. I want to just make a couple quick comments about how this series has gone. And for those of you who've been with us over the last 4 sessions, I hope that you've taken away something new, or you reinforced what you already knew. Each season we need to continue our learning, and it's good that you start with rules, regardless of whether you're a manager, coach, an umpire, a player, a parent, whoever you are. There's no better way to learn the rules than to study the rule book. So Jim, through the last 4 sessions, giving you kind of a roadmap to how to look at the rule book, but I encourage you to get your own copy, either through the Little League Rulebook app, which is free and you can download from the app stores on your handheld device, or you can get a hard copy of the Little League Rulebook from the Little League store on the littleleague.org website. It's the more we study the rules, the more we ask questions, the better we're going to be as understanding how the rules actually apply to the game. The other is, if you're an umpire, rules are only half of the role. The other half is actually going into the game and applying the rules to what happens as we get 2 teams of players to play each other. So umpires should, at this point in the season, either have already participated in an umpire mechanics training that's run by your local league or by some other organization such as, Little League West Region, or in the case of here in District 4, we have clinics coming up. So I know that some leagues have already offered their training and some are coming up over the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's essential that every year you go back and practice your skills as an umpire. So I really encourage everyone to participate in an umpire mechanics training. The last is that, learning doesn't end with, we finished 4 of these sessions. Our learning doesn't end. It doesn't end when you go out and do a game. After every game, you're going to take away something that you really like that you did, something that you wish you'd done better. And then there could have been something that you didn't quite do well, but you want to make sure the next time you really get it right. So I encourage you to have that mindset as you go into the season. And the same if you're a manager, right? Your job of working with the players is critical. And you should be thinking about after every game, not who won the game, lost the game, but how did you do as a manager or as a coach in reinforcing the primary mission for our players, which is give them a space, a game time, a couple hours on a weeknight or Saturday, Sunday, whatever, where they have fun with other players of their own age, and that they learn something about fair play and leadership and sportsmanship. So I encourage you, if you're a manager or coach, to have a little bit of a debrief on each game yourself about how you've done in those roles. So I want to thank Jim for putting this together. A lot of work goes into these sessions. We're happy to make them available to you in recorded fashion on our YouTube channel. And you can refer to those anytime you want. But thanks for participating. And I guess that's all I have, Jim.
Thank you, Don. And we are done and out of here. And I hope to umpire with some of you